You're watching.
You're watching.
You're watching.
You're watching.
You are watching
Joburg Today.
Engineering our future requires an investment in young minds by those that drive the economy. General Electric is setting the bar by putting their money where their mouth is.
So Next Engineer is a global program that GE Foundation has launched across 25 cities. It's currently in the pilot phase in 5 cities, including Johannesburg. And the whole point of it is about growing the number of engineers in the world. Because we believe that for future sustainability of the world, we'll need a lot more engineers. But specifically, we are focusing on engineers from diverse communities, because we think that currently, if you look at the globe, the engineers tend to be quite a homogeneous group. So we want to have more females in engineering and more people from wherever you are in the world coming from the minorities or the underrepresented groups in that particular community. So if you take Johannesburg, it definitely will be more women because in South Africa today, only 11% of 120,000 registered engineers are women. And yet you and I know that women are the majority of the population. So that's a huge underrepresentation. We're saying, why can't we have more women engineers? Similarly, in South Africa today, of the 120,000 registered engineers, over 60% are white males. And we're saying that the country demographically has got more black population. How can we crack more of people from underprivileged, poorer black population become engineers as well? So we really want to balance the scale, but in doing so, we are responding to the real need in the world for more engineers to build the world that works, as we said, GE.
Now in South Africa, GE will be investing $100 million US. My question to you is, how far can $100 million US go, and what is the portion that's been allocated to the city of Johannesburg?
The 100 million US dollars, a global commitment. So that's what we'll be spending in the 25 cities. Now, the allocation of that is not a simple arithmetic of 100 million divided by 25, because obviously different cities have got different cost structures. Different universities have different cost structures and so on. So the investment or the commitment out of that for Johannesburg is $2.5 million. And if you think about the scale of that, we're talking about 85,000 engineers being developed with that investment. That's our target across the 25 cities. In Johannesburg, we're looking at 3,500 people being reached. But what is quite interesting, and for me is my passion point about Next Engineers, is that it is aimed at youth between 13 years and 18 years old. So that is the high school years. That's the average period for grade 8 to grade 12. So whereas in the past, then we continue to provide bursaries for people who go to universities and study engineering, because we're one of the biggest employers of engineers in the world, we realize that to really deal with this, you need to not just deal with the symptom, but the root cause. And the root cause is about the foundation years of high school, the inspiration that people get when they're still at high school. So how do you actually get them to be familiarized with what engineers do? How do you get them to understand what engineering is about? How do you make engineering more accessible already at a high school? But what is interesting then about Next Engineers, if I may, it's got 3 phases of that. While you're still doing your grade 8, which is your first year of high school, we'll start to familiarize you with the part is what we call engineering discovery. So think about discover engineering. And we'll have volunteers from GE. We employ a lot of engineers, and then from the various institutions of higher learning, and engineers who may want to get involved from everywhere. And we'll be taking them to the schools around Johannesburg that we would have selected based on their capabilities, their location, the opportunity to develop more engineers. So probably it's going to be schools that today are not producing many people who are qualified in maths and science, and we'll be saying that how do we actually intervene and get them to qualify in that. And these engineers will be going there and have 2 hours, 1 hour sessions to familiarize people with what engineers do. By the time these kids now get to grade 10, so from grade 10, they will now be eligible to participate in the second phase, and that is what we call engineering camps. Now, these are 1 week full week camp during their school vacations, and then we'll be taking cohorts of 50, and we put them in an immersion of what it is like to be an engineer. So think about it, you're talking about 14, 15-year-olds creating something during their school holiday over 1 week under the supervision of experienced engineers, academics, and so on and so forth. But they will also have facilities through which to do it. We'll be looking to say, how do we then support the school, also train the teachers, and so on and so forth, so that in those schools which were previously not really producing much science and math grade pass rates, to now turn them around. Now, the last phase of the program for grade 11s and 12s is what we call the Engineering Academy. Now, these would get a much longer program. It's a 3-year program where they are immersed fully, working with engineers, working with tertiary institutions, and so on and so forth. And at the end of that, they will then get scholarship to continue with engineering at a tertiary of their choice.
Now, having said that, what then becomes the criteria for those who are going to engage in this program?
Of course, we would prioritize people from disadvantaged communities. We will prioritize women because we want more women in science. But obviously, potential from an academic point of view is very important. But we look at the holistic scorecard and criteria. It's not just one thing. And of course, most of all, this is city specific. And for those who might be watching this from other parts of South Africa, apologies in advance, but this is for Johannesburg. Why is that? Number one, it needs to be linked to where we are as GE, which is our head office in Johannesburg, because we don't want it to only be theoretical. We want our engineers to be able to go to those schools and spend time. And it's easier, relatively speaking, for our engineers, most of whom are based in Gauteng, to be going to Johannesburg schools than to be going to Vembe, and so on and so forth. Over time, as we learn, because this is a pilot, it may well be that we realize that the need is somewhere else, and then we adjust the program. But for now, it's Johannesburg only, because we want to make it practical, and we want these kids, which is for me is very powerful, while they're still in high school, to be able to come and visit our facilities, to go and see a power station, to go and see an airport hangar where we're repairing aircraft engines, and work alongside our engineers and see the world of engineers, to be able to visit a healthcare facility and repair a CT scan, do something on a radiography imaging equipment, and clean it up and repair it and see practically what engineers do, because seeing is believing, as they say. And when you touch and feel and talk to people who are doing the work that you're aspiring to, for us, that's very powerful. What we need is more role models. And a lot of kids in these communities do not have engineers living in their communities. They don't have engineers in their schools. They don't have engineers in their families. And therefore, this is a far-fetched thing. They read about it, sometimes get intimidated. If you simplify it, break it down, and get someone to explain it to you in the language that you understand in your own environment, and then take you to a workspace of an engineer to feel and touch and see, I think that starts to switch and change you and really make you want to be an engineer.